Hi everyone, it's Catherine, and we are back today with our second last installment of our Song of Ice and Fire reread. I'm here with Claire. Hopefully everything is okay. Hi to Sunny in the chat, and hi to everybody watching later on. We are reading all the way, or we read this week all the way from Cat 10 to Sansa 6, which has been our shortest section so far. It's 5 chapters, and I stupidly forgot. I thought we had another Ned chapter, but we didn't. We're done with Ned officially, and definitely done with Ned. So we started with Cat 10. We left off with Tyrion last week in the battle. He thought that the Lannisters had beaten the Starks, and it turns out Robb Stark had something else in mind. And the Battle of the Whispering Wood took place. And I kind of don't really understand this totally in terms of the military tactic. My brain doesn't work very well, I don't think, when it comes to military tactics. But the point here is that Robb has taken Jaime, and he's pulled a fast one on Tywin, and I think that is it's a pivotal moment for changing Tywin's plan of action for Robb. And realizing that maybe he's not going to deal with this guy in a battlefield. So yeah, sorry Claire, I've just rattled on. Hi.
Hello, hi.
So what do you think of Cat 10?
Cat 10. I haven't made many notes actually this week. There's a couple of things, again, quite random. The thing that jumps out at me at my notes is and I have to mention it because I feel like every time I see it, I have to just do a little audit of it. There's reference again to 1,000 swords reflected when she's looking at when she's watching the battle and she can hear the battle and she's thinking about it. There's reference to 1,000 swords being reflected in the moonlight, and there's also reference to 1,000 horses. There's another reference a bit later on to 1,000 in one of the other chapters, but I just thought I'd point that out again. It seems to be throughout the chapters, and definitely this book. I don't know about other books that we'll see if it comes up again, but this just seems like a sprinkling of this number 1,000 that seems to keep coming up again and again and again. And I will completely hold my hands up if George R.R. Martin happened to pop into the podcast and say, well, no, look, this is just my way of saying a huge number of things, XYZ. That's the number that I use is 1,000, but I think there may be some more significance to it, and it's in this chapter. So I think that, let me just see, yeah, this is the one where Jaime's captured, isn't it?
Yeah, this is the one where he's captured,
yeah. So there's a couple of things that jumped out in the text that she mentions that she was used to waiting, and that Brandon asked her to wait as well, and that just makes me think I think she may have been pregnant with Brandon. I know that this is something that Barr mentioned a couple of years ago.
I'm kind of with her on it. This page in particular, I was like,
She was at River Run, Brandon was at River Run, and this thing about waiting, waiting for her father, but also waiting for Brandon to come back, and that he specifically asked her to wait. And I just think there was more to it. I think, definitely, I think time-wise, without breaking down and going through a whole, like, another analysis of the timeline, I think time-wise and location-wise, Robb could easily be as Brandon's as much as he could be Ned's. I mean, the way that she says he was conceived on the night of the wedding, like just that one night before he goes away to battle, to be Ned's. It just seems like there's a huge question there. So at this point, Jaime has 12,000 the forces that Robb Rob's army was fighting against was 12,000 on Jaime's side, just to mention how big the battles were. And this is just a chapter to me where Kat is still meddling. She's still meddling in what Rob's doing, and I think that's undermining him. And I think also he seems quite okay without her being involved in his battle plans. He seems to know exactly what he's doing. And obviously Jaime is captured at the end. That's all I've got really for this chapter. Nothing really.
I basically focused on the same things as you did. She talked about him being so small, and she's thinking of him now being like this kind of man going into battle, but thinking about him being so small. But it's not like the suggestion is that he came early. He's not premature. Like the way she thinks about it, it's almost like, I don't know, maybe she got away with him being small because he was small. She could pass him off as Ned's. I don't know. But she says here, she had brought him forth in blood and pain, not knowing whether Ned would ever see him, her son. He had been so small. And then it just trails off. It's not their son. It's not our son. So I think there might be something to this. What bearing it would have overall, probably none. But I think there is something to it. I liked how she described them going into battle and that reference to here. And she talks about here in the night, here the stallion, here the war horn, and we have Mormont going in with her war horn. And I just like that kind of, she's trying to be there in the present. She's trying to be there with him in that moment. And I feel like she shouldn't be. He doesn't need her there. Even at the end where, you know, Theon is like, oh, this is great. We're winning the battle. This is great. And she says, well, did you take Tywin? Then we haven't won. The war isn't won, which is very practical, obviously. But I don't think Rob needs somebody like that around. I think at this stage he needs a couple of cheerleaders. And let Theon be a cheerleader. Let him like build his confidence. Like if Robert Baratheon's mother had been around when they were having battles during his rebellion, like that would chip away at him, I think, and doesn't allow him to take that moment to say, no, the war isn't won. That should have been his moment to say, not hers. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like she's not allowing him to be the man, not allowing him to be the leader he needs to be. And especially the biggest thing then is that the Karstarks, the Karstark sons are killed, which is going to have repercussions later on. And something that I missed the last time, when they capture Rob, or when they capture Jaime and Theon, or somebody says we should take his head or we should kill him, and Rob says no, he's a prisoner or something, and he takes off his bloody glove as he takes Jaime, and I was like, oh, that's nice foreshadowing for what's going to happen with Jaime later on, which I kind of missed. So I love just little things like that. It reminds me how great George is at just building in that stuff, which we'll see with Arya's chapter as well. Just the amount of foreshadowing with Arya's chapter, especially Arya and Kat. I feel their chapters have so much foreshadowing, and maybe we haven't had the payoff with the other ones yet. Well, Bran as well, I guess, but we haven't had the payoff with somebody like Dany or Sansa fully yet as to how much has been foreshadowed in this book. I feel like their stories still aren't maybe far enough down the road yet, but definitely Kat, Arya, Bran, they're just so rich. But yeah, I feel like Tywin has changed. He's going to change. This is the point where he's saying, right, now I'm going to have to be underhanded with this guy, because this is his first battle and he's done pretty good. Like, he's done really well. So he's way more competent than I gave him credit for. And he's way more competent than my son. So I need to change the plan here. So yeah, I also think he underestimated the phrase and what the phrase were willing to give, and what the Starks were willing to give to get the phrase as well, I guess. But Yeah, so then during the week you sent me a message about Miri Mazdor, which I assume is in reaction to the chapter we're getting next, which is Dany 8.
Yes. Yes.
So
just before we get to that, just going back to the possibility of, I do think that the whole thing with Kat and Ned and Brandon and Rob, I think there could be a possibility that in this book particularly, George started, because we've got to remember that initially it was supposed to be a trilogy, and then it was extended and expanded. I know that he likes to bury clues within the text and the kind of foreshadowing and all of these things that we enjoy as a fandom, kind of trying to piece together and theories and things. But I also believe that, and I think this is probably quite common when you're doing this huge world building saga, that you may start a particular thread of a story and then you just don't like it, or it doesn't work with something else, so it just has to be dropped, or it just fizzles away. And I think that potentially could be, you know, when we said, yeah, Brandon could be Brandon could be Rob's father, but what would it mean in the bigger story? I think there's probably a few examples in Game of Thrones where he maybe started something in terms of a story arc or burying clues that then he's decided, well, actually, I'm going to go down a different route. I don't know, because I think that's really getting into the mind of.
That would make sense with Tyrion somersaulting.
Yeah.
And also, I think with the Sandor Sansa thing, I don't know if anything's going to come of that in the end.
Yeah.
But it fizzles out, I feel.
Yeah.
And I think people maybe put too much stock in what that relationship could be. But you're right. I mean, there may have been originally a plan to upset the heritage of Winterfell or something, the line of succession at Winterfell, maybe. I don't know, because if Rob isn't her son, or if Rob isn't Ned's son, I don't know. There's definitely,
I think it's just worth bearing in mind that sometimes it feels as though, oh, look, we've just uncovered something where it might just be something that he's half started, that he didn't want to continue down that road, and it doesn't lead anywhere.
Like they had to do with Arya's list in the show. They've had to kind of cut it down because they're not going to get it all done.
No.
But so that's Kat's chapter. I feel like, I think we have one more Cat chapter left, or is that the last one? I think we have one more left.
We have one more, which is the penultimate chapter.
Yeah.
In the book.
So, I've had my biggest change throughout reading this reread. It has been my attitude towards the women, the Dany, Sansa, and Cat. Well, Arya, I'm still with Arya. I have my attitude hasn't changed to Arya at all. But definitely Cat, Dany, and Sansa, my attitude has changed hugely. Particularly Dany. I've really enjoyed Dany's chapters this time around, way more. Don't know why, but maybe that is the show. Maybe that could be the show. Because I think of all the characters, Dany's journey has been the most changed, I guess, by the show.
Yeah, I think so.
Because of what happened to Barristan and things like that, and Jorah. But then we have Dany 8, and we will have a Dany sandwich next week for our last thing. So Dany 8, this is where Drogo falls off his horse.
So so I think that there's a few things here for me. Drogo falls off his horse. He's got a bad infection, and it's quite clear to me that he's not going to be coming back from any of this. Try as she might, none of this is going to work. And just the fact that everything about Drogo seems to be deconstructed in this chapter. So he falls off his horse, so he loses his power. he loses his standing within the Khalasar. Dany even goes as far as taking the bells from his hair before he gets into the bath. Yeah, so that again, that is just deconstructing Drogo. And then his horse is slain. So those three things: he falls off his horse, he loses his power, he's lost the kudos that he ever had with the thing with the bells in his hair. Oh, hi, Simon. And the fact that his horse is killed, which means, as far as I'm concerned, that he will never get to ride through the Nightlands on his horse. His horse has been taken away from him. Everything about Drogo has been removed from him as a person in this chapter. He's never going to be coming back from any of this that happens to him. So it really is no big surprise about what happens. I did think it was interesting, kind of mirroring the prophecy of the prince that was promised, with Jorah advising, I'd forgotten about this, but these little nuggets that are there on these rereads, Jorah advising that they flee, as the new Khal will want to kill the baby. It's just this whole thing about an escape of a royal baby. Same thing happens in the present story later on with Jon and another royal baby. It might be, you know, king beyond the wall, but it's still a royal baby and an escape of a royal baby. So again, all of this kind of, there's at least 3 references we know, possibly 4 with Fagon. This whole prince mirroring the prince that was promised and the escape of this royal baby. But the thing that I've got, so we get this phrase, only death can pay for life. However, in this chapter, there is a little snippet where Dany refers to Rhaegar. Well, she can feel the baby kicking, so the baby's alive and well. You know, I can't remember because I get this mixed up maybe with a TV show about, we'll probably find out in the next couple of chapters before the end of this book. But from what it seems like, she's got a healthy pregnancy so far. And I think it's only when Jorah carries her into the tent at the end that's where Rhaegar is sacrificed, because only death can pay for life. So it's kind of like the magic wasn't quite right, and Drogo was only half revived, and maybe Rhaegar was damaged so much that he would never be able to be born alive or in a healthy human condition. There's a thing here about, this is the thing that I was texting you about, Mirri Maz Duur. She studied blood magic, which is a kind of reference to the shadows and the red priests and the shadows. She even has been to Asshai. Mirri Maz Duur has been to Asshai. So there's lots of things here about blood magic, priests, Asshai, shadows, shadow babies, for example, like Melisandre, and the reference to Asshai, the Shadowlands. I think the whole ritual here is all about blood and fire. These are the Targaryen words. So my question was Mirri Maz Duur actually on Dany's side? And was she there when she inducted her into, you will be my but basically like birthing partner, my midwife? I think that Mirri Maz Duur was there to help bring the birthing of the dragons, not the baby. So I think that she recognizes that Daenerys is this powerful Targaryen. There's this notion of blood and fire. And I think that the last thing that Mirri Maz Duur wanted would be for Daenerys to have like a half Dothraki baby. You know, this should be, this shouldn't. So remove Drogo from the situation and remove Rhaego from the situation, because this would be some half-breed Dothraki Targaryen. So remove those. What needs to happen is the birth of the dragons. And I think all of this, blood and fire, the Targaryen words, blood and fire, the blood magic, the shadows, it all kind of fits together to me. I'm probably not explaining it very well, but I feel that Mirri Mazda was actually on Daenerys' side and wanted to help her recognize her Targaryenness and remove anything else that was a distraction from that, and bring forth the birth of the dragons, which would be the most significant thing that can happen to somebody like Dany, to then reinforce this kind of sense of her being a Targaryen, and words, blood and fire, which are the Targaryen, it's the Targaryen words. I'm repeating myself, so I'm going to stop. But
yeah,
I think it was definitely a magical event.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the thing that happens later, which we're going to be looking at next week. George has said, this whole unburnt thing with Daenerys. No, that was a magical event. So what were these magical events for? What were they designed for? What were they supposed to do? Who was involved? So I think
you're totally right, and but I would disagree on a small, almost technical detail, but it may not be technical in the long run. I don't think she's on Dany's side. I think she's on the side of wanting to bring magic back into the world, and I think there are a lot of people across different religions trying to work together to do that, or at least trying to bring prophecy together. And I kind of had this moment, I was trying to think, I can't remember my catechism, I'm sorry, but I was raised Catholic, but there are a lot of prophets referred to in the Bible that do bring different faiths together to preach the coming of a savior. In the Old Testament, and she feels like this, and she's also met Marwan, so there's some sort of crossing over here between religions that has been happening, some sort of working together between different faiths, different disciplines, whatever you like to call it. But I think she's working to bring magic into the world, not Dany. And I actually think I overlooked something really important here in this chapter. I overlooked the importance of Drogo in this equation for the dragons, because Drogo is like the calloused Cal, right? He's like, you can't get any more Cal than Drogo, okay? So his blood is so important for this magic to work. I think without Drogo it doesn't work. And even later on, I'm jumping ahead into Dany 9 a little bit, but later on, like Mirri Mazda says, you didn't save me, Dany. Like, you didn't do anything for me. Like, this is nothing, like basically nothing to do with you. Okay? I mean, I tried to give you good advice and he didn't take it. So that's fine. That's on him. But this has nothing got to do with you. And I feel like she is doing this to bring magic into the world. Dany is incidental in that she's a means to an end. For them, it's not about thrones and it's not about taking over. It's about bringing magic back in. And I'm more interested in the idea of the dancers at the end and the dancing shapes. I'm really interested in that kind of, because we have the Dance of Dragons later on, that kind of metaphor, I guess, that dance, the fight between life and death. I'm really interested in that idea, like, because there's with dancing, like if you think of dancing, there's certain free form to it, but there's a beauty to it as well. So there's like a beauty in this life and death in this dance. So I feel like it's not clear cut yet, and we may never find out what Mary's up to. But I also liked how the flies, I forgot how gross this chapter was. I was eating my lunch when I was reading this. And I was like, the description of the pulse and the blood, I was like, I forgot how gross it was. And the description of crushing the flies, I was like, here. And the idea of the flies flying around him and the blood, and I was thinking of the dragons then. that kind of foreshadows the dragons coming, and it takes the Cal to fall off his horse for dragons to be birthed into the world, and that's really key. I think that Drogo is really, really key. And you're right that I loved what you said there about deconstructing him as a character. And her question, her statement was when he falls off the horse, she says he was a fire in human skin. So that makes me think that it's also the fire and blood in him. You know, I know that's referring to like him being sick or whatever, but still, like there's a lot of imagery throughout Game of Thrones with Drogo and fire and just being red hot and hot blooded and all that kind of thing. So I think you're right. The fire and blood is really important, but it's just as important that Khal Drogo is part of that equation.
Yeah,
because nobody else can fill his shoes, right? I don't think we're going to have a Khal maybe at the end. I don't know what the Dothraki will look like at the end of this series.
Yeah.
I'm not sure about how what they're going to look like. I feel like this is going to be the like you said, the deconstruction of Drogo might ultimately lead to the deconstruction of the Dothraki. They may splinter off or something.
I think the big thing for me about the Dothraki that stands out is they follow power. So whoever can demonstrate strength and power, and they also is their whole culture and religion is based on horses. I think that they will. I think they will kind of see Dany when we leave her at the end of Dance with Dragons, and she runs into, I think it's called Pono, the one who she kind of vows to destroy if she ever sees him again. And I think there's they will.
Two.
Yeah, there's Joko and
Moko. No.
Yeah,
I can't. I don't know.
Yeah,
The
they end up being
all the same to me. I'm racist.
But I think potentially they would see the strength and power of the dragon kind of like as like almost like a flying horse.
Absolutely,
you know, like flying through the sky, and I think they will immediately fall on their knees, and it'll be Khaleesi.
And they've emphasized that. Sorry, spoiler alert, people. They have emphasized that in the show. That's what happens, basically. Yeah. What is interesting is, and sorry, spoiler for the show, don't listen for a couple of seconds if you don't want to know. But what's interesting to me in the show is that she gets all of the Dothraki to pledge to be Blood Riders. Did you like in the last series? They all pledge to be Blood Riders.
Yes.
So that makes me worry for the Dothraki, big time.
Well, if she dies, they all have to kill themselves, basically.
Or they all have to become White Walkers or Whites or I was wondering, actually, it's okay now to listen again, it's fine. I was wondering, is Khal Drogo, is he, we'll talk more about this next week, I'm sure, is he going to be a blood white? Like, what kind of white is he when Miri has done all of this? I feel like it's a blood white of some sort, because it seems to be mainly magic rooted in blood, right?
Yeah, or fire.
Well, we have our yeah, I guess, but does she doesn't use fire to bring Drogo back to life? She uses blood, right? Or does she?
Yeah, no, it's the whole thing is tied up in both. It's blood and fire, isn't it?
Yeah. I was just because I always think like so. Melisandre, her fire is definitely fire for her.
Fire magic, yeah. So maybe it is just a combination of blood.
Yeah.
It is blood magic.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, is it all just different degrees of blood magic? Like there's a thermometer.
Well, possibly, because with Melisandre, she's always wanted. Well, she wants royal blood, and king's blood is very important in terms of sacrifice. So it's kind of similar, isn't it? Similar.
But that's why I think it's really important, because so far we've had king's blood used, but the Khal is the only one who has been completely like killed for like a magical event to happen. So that's why the magical event that comes from his death is so much greater than anything else we'll see from, like, you know, shadow assassins or whatever else we see in the series. It's nothing compared to what Khal Drogo's blood was able to bring about. I really feel people overlook the importance of Khal Drogo's, like, Khalness, if you like. Like, Dany is obviously really important, but even Dany says later on, I think she says something about, like, the most important thing for her was being full of his seed or something like that. That it's the union of those two coming together that's the most important thing. And yeah, and I think we're going to have that, because that's the song, right? We're going to have a song at the end where we're going to have another union that's going to be really, really important for whatever happens at the end, whatever horrible thing happens at the end. The other thing I wanted to point out in this, just she says that she talk about Rhaegar, and she says what does she say? Her brother Rhaegar died for the woman he loved. Did he? Is she talking about Lyanna? And does she have a different story about Lyanna than the Starks do?
Well, she hears this from, well, she knows everything that she knows is from Viserys, and this is his story, isn't it? That Rhaegar died with the name of the woman who he loved, screaming out her name.
Really? I don't remember that at all.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Did you already read that?
I'm sure we've read. Yeah.
Oh my god, I completely missed that.
We've read that already, because we get that again in the next book, don't we? In the House of the Undying, we get her visions of but I think
I completely missed that.
I think we've already
need another reread.
I think so. I mean, don't, you know, God, my head's like a sieve. So
no, as John said, you're the oracle, so that's it. Yeah, and the other thing is Drogo's last words. Must ride, no, 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 no. There's last words. Just thought I'd point it out, because I don't think he talks again. So yeah, whatever that means. But yeah, no, I was just wondering about the Rhaegar thing. So the Targaryens do have a completely different story. They don't see it as a rape.
No.
Okay.
No, they see it as Rhaegar. That, you know, that was like his love.
How do they have that story? Because the reason I'm asking is they could only have got this story through some sort of Dornish insight.
Possibly, or what was he called who was with them?
It might be an important clue as to where Dany actually grew up.
Yeah. Yes, it could be. Yeah.
It's just that I don't know why I overlooked it before. But yeah, so I do feel after this chapter, we'll get Arya's chapter next, which is one of the most horrific chapters in Game of Thrones, if not the most. It is the most horrific chapter. I do feel after Arya's chapter, this is now Dany's story. Then it becomes Dany's book from after Arya's chapter. So again, him just putting chapters together very, very deliberately as we go into Arya 5. And yeah, we have the horror. I've 3 lines written. That's it, because it's so horrible. I just wanted to get through it. I still haven't recovered. I haven't recovered from how disconnected we instantly become with Ned. It's not just that he's killed. We never hear from him again. Like, it's just so, and we get from the point of view of what, a 7-8-year-old kid, we're getting this view of him being killed, and it's just like, it's so brutal. It's one thing to take a character away. It's another thing to have it in such a disconnected way, with one daughter completely in shock and the other daughter screaming. So it's horrible. And my husband said, make sure you talk about how fucking weird that is, that he does that.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, we will. So Yeah, I don't really have much except for this chapter. It foreshadows Arya with eyes again and chasing cats, and Yoren saves her. I want to say saves her for now, and we have the rumors that there are all these different stories going around about Ned and Robert and the Queen and stuff. So, yeah. So that's all I have to say really on this chapter. So.
Okay. Well, I think that first of all, I'll hold my hand up and say these 3 chapters have thrown me completely, because, and I even said to Stuart, I just read Arya's chapter and I feel like I've missed a Ned chapter somewhere.
Me too.
I thought that I thought I'd read the death of Ned in a Ned chapter.
That's because in the show it's all from his point of view.
Right.
No, I thought there was another chapter. So the last Ned chapter we had was the Varys one, right?
Yes.
And for some reason I thought there was another one.
Yeah, I didn't even know that was the last one when we were discussing it.
Yes,
So
I said it was the second last, because I thought there was 16 Ned chapters, but there's 15. I don't know why I had it. There was 16.
So that threw me completely, and I had to go back and actually. So I've actually listened to the Arya chapter a couple of times and the Sansa chapter a couple of times actually, and what we get from this is the so Ned's death, obviously, and then the immediate reaction in the next 3 chapters from Ned's apparently trueborn children, the only ones that have got point of view voices in this book. So we get Arya, Bran, and Sansa immediately, and it's I suppose, yes, from a the flow of the story, then it's a good way to kind of like catch up with that character. How do they feel? How did they react? But also, I think these 3 chapters here are absolutely key and paramount. You mentioned before, Kat, about foreshadowing with this chapter, particularly with Arya's chapter. I think it's also a fundamental shaping of what happens to those characters and how they have to be from this point forward. So with Arya, you get vibes all the way through about the lone wolf, the identity, the fact. I mean, even at the beginning of the chapter, she instinctively wants to like escape by sea, and she goes to the docks, and there's hears all the different languages and sees all the different ships from across the world, and it's a bit like Bravos, so we're kind of introduced to this is going to it just sets the scene for how these 3 characters' point of views are going to be going forward as a snapshot and as a reaction. And also they all 3 of them reacted very differently. Their reaction to Ned's death tells us how their character is going to develop throughout the rest of the books. And with Arya, it's about a lone wolf identity. With Bran, it's all about magic and anti-magic. And with Sansa, it's all about her no longer being a child and about her basically she's got to become her own hero, and she's beginning to realize that now. She sees Joffrey for who he is for the very first time. It's like Ned's death has some kind of awakening in each 3 of the children of how they've reacted to his death. Yes.
Rickon as well.
Yes, and Rickon, absolutely. Rickon, even he almost has his own point of view chapter within Bran's point of view chapter. So it's going back to Arya again about in this chapter, we get this underlining of there are lots of false stories and gossip going around everywhere, ranging from some of it's got a bit of truth in it, but it's been twisted around to completely outrageous, like that just wouldn't have happened. You get it all the way through, like later on, people saying that Rob can transform himself into a wolf, and that it was Ned that killed the king, not not the boar, and you know, all of these wild stories, false stories and gossip, which I think to me is a way of saying don't listen, you know, don't listen to everything. And there's all sorts of allusions to, you know, hear, see with your eyes but don't look, and listen but not hear, and all of those kind of things, you know, that you get throughout this. But questions that I've got in this Arya chapter: how did Yoren have Needle? Like, how did he have Needle?
Yeah.
And secondly, how did he even know to take Arya? Like, is it, I mean, you just on a surface level, you just think, oh well, it's his northern loyalty to the north and to the Starks and what have you. But just thinking about that.
Wait, did she drop Needle and he just picks it up, right? No? Did I misread
I
that?
think no, I think she loses it like quite a way back, because she's got
after
the wooden
she killed
stick.
the butcher, after she killed the boy.
Oh, Stuart's saying she drops it off as she comes off Baelor's statue. I thought she had the wooden sword with her.
He grabs her and then she drops it.
Yeah,
No,
I think she drops it.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, that's answered my question. But how did he know to take her? And just, I mean, again, you get this. The whole thing about identity is immediately.
Is it Serial Pharrell?
Is it Syria? Yeah, that's exactly what I've got here. Was he connected to Syrio in any way with calling her boy?
Yeah.
That's the second character in the book that calls her boy. The fact that she's looked away, and we know later on from Sansa's chapter that Sansa didn't look away. That relates back to Jon's chapter with Bran, but very first chapter, I think. Don't look away, or father will know. So. And Arya did look up, like she had to look away. She probably wouldn't have done, but Yoren shielded her and she had to look away. So this is kind of the opposite of what Jon said to Bran.
I wonder how would that have changed her arc had she saw it?
Yeah. That may
would she become more compassionate or empathetic, or like yeah, I don't know how it would change her. I feel it definitely changes Sansa.
Oh, completely. Yeah.
Completely, almost a complete 180.
Yeah. The other thing, as you said, is how horrific it is in terms of just the reactions and the noise of the crowd and everybody being summoned. Everyone in King's Landing being summoned to Ned's death is just horrific.
Yeah.
And like you say, to see all of that through the eyes of Arya it's like doubly cruel.
And I love the way Joffrey says, I won't show mercy to traitors. You know, I'm not going to be weak like my betrothed and my mother. As long as I'm alive, as long as I'm your king, traitors will be made suffer, yada yada yada. Like, nobody gives a shit about whether people betray you or not. Like, this isn't about the people. The people are just here because they don't have X Factor, right?
Yeah.
They're here. They're here just to see someone get their head chopped off. They don't give a shit.
Yeah.
They don't even know what the real story is.
Yeah.
So like the shock of that is just like, oh no, what in the hell is king now? And again, I mean, I think I would say it's a commonly accepted belief that this is Littlefinger's work. But I'm not entirely sure. I think it's totally possible it is Littlefinger's work, but I think Joffrey could have easily come to this conclusion on his own.
Yeah.
And just because of the way he was treated in the court, where nobody was listening to him, I think he's trying to make people listen to him and trying to say, no, this is what happens. This is what's going to happen from now on. This is it. And the fact that Arya thinks Ned is going to have ice on him, you know, that's he's going to be able to save himself. She's a child. Like, it's just so horrible. Yoren, I'm interested in what you think about Yoren. I have two questions actually. What you think about Yoren in terms of his motives at this stage? Is it money? financial gain? Is he with Syria or whatever? I know you touched on that as well. You've questions about that, so you may not have an answer. And my other question is, out of all the characters, I feel Arya's narratives is way more focused in terms of where it's been going from the very, very beginning. So you mentioned there, George initially had this set out as a trilogy. So do you think Arya's character arc is the least, or is it's going to have changed the least from his original plan? Because I feel he has a very definite idea of where he wants her to go. I feel he hasn't strayed too far off her part of the trilogy, if you like, compared to other characters. I feel like there's very little filler with Arya. Everything is very determined.
Yeah. I agree. Just the first question, I don't know, but I think it was definitely for a reason that we probably don't think, which is not just about northern loyalty and feeling because you're not even supposed to get involved as the Night's Watch in affairs of the state or whatever. So I'm not entirely sure why you did that, why you kind of effectively rescued her.
Maybe it would have benefited him on the wall, like with Ben and stuff.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I mean, it would have been something more to do with Benjen than John, because I don't think Yoren and John have even met each other, have they? Or maybe before John went to the wall. Yoren was at Winterfell for a while.
It's very coincidental that he found her at that point. It's a massive coincidence.
I think there's something there, definitely. I think somebody's been keeping an eye and guiding Arya, whatever that is, whether it's, spirit of Ned and the old gods or whatever, or if it's some kind of she was always destined to be at the House of Black and White in Braavos. She was always destined to have that connection to the Faceless Men, because, again, there are kind of archetypal Stark characters. You've got the Wild Wolf, the Lone Wolf, the and they were kind of like represented with Ned and his siblings, and it's kind of maybe mirrored and represented in this generation. She's definitely the lone wolf, and I think he always had that in mind for her story arc, that this was, she was always going to go off on a journey and be this like badass character. So
my second question kind of answers my first question, that it kind of, that it's kind of like Cat. I mean, if Yoren runs into Arya and it's a complete accident, then it's the second biggest coincidence in the book that moves the arc on in a very, very definite direction. The first being when Tyrion walks into the same inn as Cat, and she decides to take him. And with Cat, with Cat and Rob, he needs to get them to the Red Wedding. Everything is like getting them to the Red Wedding and having her become Stoneheart. So with Arya, there's something more with the Yoren thing. She feels a threat there, but she's so in shock that she just gives into it. Again, we're going to have something similar with that with Sansa in her chapter, which I completely fucking overlooked. It's so creepy. With Pycelle later on, I completely overlooked it.
Yeah. He basically molested her.
And she's held down while it happens, and it's kind of it's not that Yoren molests Arya, but I mean he could have, and she was so in shock, nothing would happen. But what he does do is take her hair or whatever. But it's a huge shock, and I feel like even reading that for the first time, I saw the show before I read the book, so I knew what was going to happen, but I feel having read it, I wonder how many readers actually didn't fully grasp the enormity of what had just happened. That Ned is gone now. Do you know that guy who's been most of this book's like hero? Like he's gone. He's just gone. and it's a huge kind of it's really ballsy.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, the amount of people that reading, I mean, I don't know about the show, but reading that part of the book and then just throwing the book against the wall and like, how dare you kill the protagonist? That's just so, like, it seems to make no sense. And again, I think that's probably what gripped a lot of show watchers was that, oh my God, you know, and the fact that, you know, Sean Bean as well was cast in the role. Yeah. Although I think, isn't he one of the actors who's like had most, he's like
the one most deaths or something.
Yeah, something like that. He's died so many, yeah. He dies in everything.
Yeah, and he's never in anything good where he lives. So what do you think is the significance of learning or of seeing Ned die through Arya rather than anyone else? Like, why not Sansa? Why do you think it's Arya? Is it because she is going to be, like we have our calloused Cal with Drogo, is she going to be our Starkest Stark? Because she's definitely heading in the direction pretty rapidly of like a lot of those wintry, dark, violent Starks that we hear reference to, the lone wolves and things like that. I wonder. Yeah. I don't have an answer for it. I just wonder.
See, to me, I see it differently. I see the three chapters, the next three chapters, as well, Arya, Bran, and Sansa as all being one like big super chapter, which is them each reacting to Ned's death. It just so happens to be that Arya was the first up. So I
didn't even do that on purpose. It just worked out nicely that way, actually. They do work. So the next chapter is horrific in so many ways, though, the Bran chapter. But yeah, I just wonder. I mean, I think probably Arya is going to do the darkest shit. Because of this. So it has to be through her that we see Ned's. Well, I mean, Bran, I suppose, could as well, but I think it has to be through Arya that we see Ned die because of that, maybe, in order for us not to lose sympathy for her. We're going to have to be able to. George is going to want us to be able to justify a lot of what she does.
Yes, and her drive for revenge. Yeah.
I mean, if Sansa was to do it, we wouldn't. Well, no, we would, but we'd have to see it from her point of view then. If Sansa ever does the kind of things that Arya does. But yeah, it's, well, that we think Arya is going to do. But yeah, so that's it. Ned is gone, just like that.
Yeah.
With a pretty swift execution, kind of. I feel I don't know. Luckily, I've never been to an execution, but I'm guessing they do happen quite swift. Swiftly. I don't think they draw these things out.
Yeah.
Did you see Gunpowder, actually, the Kit Harington thing?
I didn't. Was it any good?
I was bored in the second episode. I stopped watching it. But the first episode, the execution, there's an execution scene. It's really it is pretty quick. So you'd imagine that that's the way it would be. But Joffrey is the worst. So that's it then for Arya and Ned. Is that our last Arya chapter? I feel
it is. Yeah, that's the last Arya chapter in the book. Yeah.
So then we're on to Bran. Bran 7.
Which will be the last Bran chapter and the last Sansa chapter as well in the books.
So so we just have Kat and Dany and Jon. Is that right? Kat, Dany, Jon.
And Tyrion.
And Tyrion, yes. Yeah, so we're leaving behind the kids. That's kind of made me sad, actually. I didn't realize that until you said it. So yeah, we've Bran 7, and there's a lot about. The thing I love about Bran's chapters, they're hugely emotional, but they give you just a volume of information and lore as well. It is a dance that he has going on in this chapter. So I'm going to let you take this first because I have a lot of questions about Lewin.
Oh right, yes, yeah. There's a few random things that I'll throw in here. I do think that there's something that's really mean about Bran, the way that he sees Hodor as this prop, where he says this considering Hodor as less than human and to be his vehicle to get him, you know, transport him around from A to B. When he says Hodor could be my legs, and it's like, oh, for God's sake, Bran, you know, it's like treat the man as a human being. I just don't like that. It's just something. It's just a bugbear that I've got. I think that this chapter is all about magic, the importance of magic, the importance of Bran's role in magic going forward, and the role of Maester Luwin as a Maester in terms of the stance of being anti-magic. I mean, he's so anti-magic that he's even attacked, you know, Shaggy Dog attacks him, attacks Maester Luwin, which to me just screams that, you know, this is a magical creature that clearly can tell the vibes that are coming off Luwin as being anti-magic. But I also think I don't trust him.
He knows it works, right? Like,
yeah, he does.
It's not that he's a skeptic.
No, what he does is he talks about things, and then he talks about lore and history and magic, and then he immediately says, "Oh, but that was in the Age of Heroes. That was just dreams. Don't pay attention to your dreams. You know, this was just basically fairy tales," which is exactly the you know, the line that's perpetuated throughout Westeros.
But then he does believe the south you get.
He doesn't. He
does at one point. He believes them.
Well, yeah. I mean, enough to. I mean, that's just so spooky that Bran and Rickon have the same dream, and he dismisses it as like, oh, this, you know, these kind of things happen sometimes. We have the same dream, and it's like, no, that just doesn't seem right. So now when Luwin talks about things that have happened in the past in the Age of Heroes and the Children of the Forest and who they were, when he talks about the Arm of Dawn and the story about the Arm of Dawn, that now to me feels completely untrue. I don't believe anything that Luwin's saying about history in the past. I think it's all it's untrue. So that things like the Arm of Dawn, I don't trust that what he's saying there is the actual, you know, correct history. I think the Meisters have rewritten history to their own design and their own advantage. I think it's just weird though that, like, the feeling that Bran has, and it is kind of like when the Raven arrives, he knows that what the word is going to be, dark wings, dark words. But in this chapter, Bran feels that he's got this compulsion to know about the Children of the Forest. He needs to know more about them. He says he feels it was important to know more about the Children of the Forest. So we do get a little bit of backstory here. We get that there was a pact that was forged between the Children of the Forest and the First Men, that the Andals came over and killed the children, and that the pact was no more weirwoods would be cut down, and that there was an order of green men that were created, and I think lived in, is it the God's Eye, near like Harrenhal, around that way.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I haven't really, apart from just observations, really. When he's talking about things like Simian Star Eyes, I just put blue eyes ? That seemed a bit weird to me. So it's like, well, and again, going back to Arya's chapter about gossip and false stories and wild accusations about things. I mean, this is somebody that we are told was a knight, was blind, and he used sapphires in his, he threw 2 sapphires into his head to represent eyes, blue eyes, and was called Simian Star Eyes. Well, actually, what if he was another? There's a whole So what we get here is history and lore and magic thrown up into the air. It seems to be very important to Bran and Bran's character and Bran's story arc. And we get a sense from Maester Luwin that he's anti-magic, that Meisters are anti-magic, and that there's all sorts of like untruths and exaggerations and twisted history and stories that we don't know whether to believe is true or false. We just know that it's there and it exists, and that people fall on either the side of believing in it or not believing in it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And Barbara just left us a lovely message, and Simon, both thanking us for our reread. We're rocking this reread, apparently.
Thanks,
Thank you
Barbara.
guys for joining us. You're so good. And thank you, Claire, for joining me. I totally agree with you. I think they are anti-magic, but they know it's real. It's not like they don't think magic isn't real. They know it's real. And even Luwin says that when they're healing his hand, which I forgot, Shaggy Dog attacks him. I forgot about that. That he could. There's an easier way to do it. You know, the children would have a magical way to do it, but that his way is the better way to do it, maybe, or that the children aren't around anymore, so they can't do it. And I just wonder, why are they so anti-magic? Is it because they're trying to prevent the Miri Mazdors of the world, the sycophants, the people that will go to extreme lengths to achieve magical things? Or I'm interested to know. It feels like it's not just out of a sense of protection. There's some other reason why they're so anti-magic.
Well, these things usually come down to power and control, don't they? So it's I don't think it's any coincidence that the Citadel and the High Towers and the Faith are all from exactly the same location and seem to sort of develop in tandem.
I just don't. I'm still unclear as to how powerful they are. I guess it's way more subtle than Littlefinger and Varys, for instance. Like Luwin, as we saw before, Luwin is very instrumental in convincing Robb to march south. And here, like he's definitely trying to shape Bran and Rickon's view of the world. And it made me wonder, does the Citadel assign like the most skeptical, the most rational, intelligent maesters to the most kind of magically, I guess, inclined houses? So like, is Luwin there because the Starks in particular could very easily wander off into Greensight or something? Because he seems to be aware of it.
Yeah.
He's not skeptical. He's trying to say, no, your dreams don't mean anything. But he knows that there's something to it for sure. Because when they go down to the crypts and they feel, they get that sense of dread. Like Bran can tell Luwin feels it as well. Yeah, I mean, we find out also that Rickon is 4 now. He tells us 4. I just keep thinking one of my nephews 3 and the other one's 5. 4, my God, like it's horrible. The fact that Luwin is anti direwolf, especially anti Shaggy Dog, because Shaggy Dog has no control, and I think that when they don't even read out the message when it arrives, he just says, we're going to have to get a stone carver that knows his face. It's just heartbreaking. But also that thing you said about Hodor, Luwin does say to him, you can't treat a Hodor like this. He's a human being. Let's get Osha.
Yeah.
It's like,
my God.
What kind of view of wildlings are you trying to send to these kids?
Yeah.
So yeah. But the other thing that we get, which is kind of passed over really quickly, but there will be a payoff for it in Clash, is obviously that Winterfell is grossly undermanned, I guess.
Yes.
They don't have enough people to protect Winterfell. Like why Luwin isn't actively trying to do something about that is beyond me.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure, is that should that be his job with Roderick in mind? But Lewin seems to be way more. I feel like since he gave all that help to Rob when he was going to battle, why not spend more time with Roderick and try and sort out that problem? But as you said, because he's so anti-magic, he's spending time with Bran because he knows there's something going on with Bran.
I don't think he can be. He can't. He's not to be trusted, Lewin. No. That's coming out strong and clear. I think we've already talked about the fact that any time a Stark leaves to go south to leaves Winterfell to go south, they don't come back.
No.
They don't come back. They come back from the north, like Benjen comes to visit and things like that. So they do come back from the north, but they don't come back from the south.
Mm-hmm.
Lewin sees an opportunity to do exactly that, to get the current Lord of Winterfell out of Winterfell down south. He's never going to come back again. They never do. So that's one massive point against him. Why would he do that? And just the general concept of, I mean, if you had to design this or if you had to experience it yourself, it is very subtle. I think they've got themselves into this very trusted, neutral position. They don't use their house names. You know, it's almost like, again, it's like another order where you give everything up and you attach yourself to a house and you're loyal and you provide this advice and you've got this very, you know, all this knowledge that you bring with you. And it's almost like, why would anybody ever want to question the motives of a Maester? You know, they're loyal, they're knowledgeable, they're there to help. They'll birth your children, they will heal you when you're not feeling well, and they will provide you with learning and education, and just, you know, they've put themselves into this invaluable position that you would never question, which makes me question it.
Yeah.
So you know, and I do, this comes up much later on when we get to meet Barbary Dustin later, and I just think, yeah, she's got a finger on the pulse here when it comes to these grey rats.
Yes.
You know, they definitely can't be trusted. And
she has her finger on the pulse of a lot of things. I like her.
Yeah.
And I think it's hugely important that we're going to see Sam in this position now.
Yes.
And what is he going to uncover?
Yeah, exactly. What's he going to find out?
Yeah. So yeah, it's this is where after the initial shock of Arya's chapter, you really do get the sadness, and I feel like we might be being a bit hard here on Lewin as well, because I think he is genuinely saddened by Ned's death as well. So I can't help, even though they're not technically religious, I can't help thinking of old Catholic priests when I think of this, like the old kind of this idea of having power, having a big say in a family, holding sway. But then there's genuine compassion there as well with many of them. There's a sense of a vocation there. But for maesters, it's more of a scientific thing. But there's a sense of entitlement. Like I'm entitled to this opinion, and I demand that you respect that, kind of thing, that I can't quite shake, which is definitely So that's the end of Bran, and there's a lot going on here, especially with Rickon. And it makes me, again, as I said before with Rickon, I still feel there's a future prologue or epilogue coming from Rickon. Because I think we need it. Otherwise, and I think if Rob isn't a Stark kid, right? Which I think it would make sense if he isn't, then we should definitely get one from Rickon. Because then definitely we'd have a point of view from all of the Stark kids, except for Rob, who may or may not be a Stark kid anyway. So and I know we don't tend to get point of views from the kings and stuff like that. So But it's arguable as to whether Rob, I don't know, declaring yourself a king, does that make you king? I don't know. Or being declared, I don't know. I don't know how that works. But anyway, I do think that we will get something from Rickon, and that shaggy dog is, yeah, he's a liability for many people there. Yeah, so then we are into our last chapter, and it's Sansa's chapter. And I have to say, this week, Sansa's chapter was my favorite chapter to read. I really enjoyed this chapter this week, because the way it starts, I forgot just how much goes on in this chapter for her. And also, I cannot help in this chapter of thinking of Sophie Turner playing Sansa, and I think she does an amazing job playing Sansa. And just that reaction of seeing Ned, it's just, I loved this chapter so much. It gave me a whole new appreciation, and it rescues her from that other chapter that we've had, where a lot of people hate Sansa because of that last chapter that we had from her, Sansa 5. I think this chapter, a complete 180 for me, and it starts with her saying that she gave herself to the darkness.
Yes, that's exactly what I've written. Yeah.
It's a great line, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just that perfect, it just captures this moment.
Yeah.
She gave herself to the darkness. Arya won't do that for a while just yet. Like, Arya has already started that path, but I forgot about this line, and it just made me think, God, Sansa already committed herself. She's already committed to completely changing. She, throughout this chapter, when she's forced to look at Ned's head, she decides she's going to look beyond it. She doesn't have to see. It's the complete opposite to Arya. She's not going to see what is in front of her. She's going to look beyond it. And the idea of Sansa becoming potentially one of the most politically savvy characters in this book, later on, that idea that she will be able to maybe see beyond the problem or see beyond what's in front of her, be very forward thinking, a bit like Rob actually in that sense. And but keep her courtesies. It's actually kind of like Tywin. It's a little bit like Tywin actually.
Yes, yeah. But well, manipulative in a way, you could look at it that way. I think this is definitely the chapter where Sansa is no longer a child, and again, this is a reaction to her father's death. Whether or not she feels that she's given herself to the darkness because it was so much more, well, she saw it, she didn't look away. So whether or not that had more of an impact, I think that it's important to note that Sansa says that she basically doesn't dream. She doesn't sleep very well, but when she does, she doesn't dream. She doesn't seem to dream a lot, and she certainly doesn't seem to dream as much as the other children. You know, we get chapters and chapters and chapters with the other children where it's like John dreamed of, you know, Bran woke from a dream. That's, you know, it's all to do with them having these experiences of dreams, which then makes me think, I mean, she does dream in this chapter. She dreams of a man coming for her. I'll get to that in a second. But the fact that she doesn't dream so much and she doesn't dream as much as the other children makes me think about Lady, and makes me think that the dire wolves were there for a reason, and that they were there to be discovered for a reason, and that they're this magical conduit for the children that maybe has something to do with Bloodraven. The dog's doing some really stinky farts.
But just on that though, that you're talking about her dreams, one of the parts of a dream that she has is that she feels naked, and and poor Marwood, she feels naked. Is he already into the Brussels sprouts? It's a bit early. But yeah, that idea that she's naked without Lady, like, I just think the fandom is way too hard on Sansa, and she is by far in the worst position at the moment. And that idea, she's the furthest from home, and she's the most alone and the most naked. So yeah, I'm with you there on the dreams. It's very sad.
she dreams of a man coming for her, who in her mind, the anticipation is that this is Cyril in pain, because obviously that's the scary monster in her mind. But it's not. In reality, it's not. It ends up being Joffrey that comes for her. But I just think, who is this man that she's dreaming of that's coming for her? And that's potentially Littlefinger.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Especially if you buy into the fact that he may have got Joffrey to kill Ned. Definitely, yeah.
Both Arya and Sansa have male characters in their chapters who seem to be brutish but kind of unusually gentle with them at the same time, and helpful, I suppose you could say. And obviously for Arya it's Yoren, and for Sansa it's the Hound. And she really pays attention to his words in this chapter. Yeah, let's just make note again of, I know we've mentioned it, but I just found it absolutely, when I read it, it was like Pycelle groping her and holding her down. It was just that. But again, it just shows her vulnerability. I actually thought, when I was kind of piecing together, this is a big like super chapter, it's the 3 children, it's their reaction to Ned, the coming of age thing for Sansa in this chapter, about feeling that, you know, she's had the like stones taken off her eyes or whatever, so she can see now Joffrey for who he is. She can see that Meryn Trant doesn't either like her or dislike her, he's just doing his duty. She can see it's all falling into place for her. She's no longer a child, and I thought that by the end of this chapter, it kind of was like, oh yeah, this is the one where she goes to the ramparts and sees Ned's head. But I thought that this might be the chapter where she actually gets her first like moon blood, and that would definitely be like she's no longer a child. It is mentioned, Joffrey does mention to her, when will you be able to have a child?
See, I think she's already had it. In that chapter where Arya threw, was it pomegranate juice or something like that on her, and it soaked through.
Yeah.
I thought, no, that's not pomegranate juice the whole way through. I think that's the beginning, because a lot of young girls, when they first get their period, it happens like you might just get a little bit at some stage, and then it'll be the whole thing later on. So that's what I think. I think she's already.
Yeah, she's just everything about this is like no longer a child. And listening to the Hound's words about, basically he tells her, just pretend, just obey, you know, just things will go easier for you if you just basically play along with it, do what you've always been trained to do. And she keeps coming back to these words. He's basically telling her to be her own hero, which is the beginning of what kind of happens here with Sansa. We can see that she still thinks about being a queen, which I thought was quite interesting. When she becomes queen, what she'll do with Sir Meryn Trant. The other thing from this chapter is the 1,000 is mentioned again, 1,000 steps going up. Just putting it out there. And the head, I got the same thing as you there about looked but didn't see, and that being the opposite of Arya. It also is, you know, throughout these books, we get, I can definitely remember Jamie talking to Brienne about this, and I think maybe one of the Stark children as well, or maybe just when something really horrible is about to happen, and that phrase of go somewhere else in your head. You know, just go somewhere else. And it's never really, I mean, we know what that is and we know what it means, but this is an example of that. This is a real example of somebody going somewhere else in their head. And so being present and being able to look at something, but like you say, just look through it almost, and look beyond it and take your mind somewhere else completely. So she did that, and she did that herself. She didn't need to have somebody else saying to her, go somewhere else in your mind, go somewhere, this is going to be traumatic, this is going to be horrible. To an extent, she had the Hound saying, just pretend, just go along with it and pretend.
I feel she did that with with which I think it's totally plausible that Pycelle sexually assaulted her in that
Yeah.
scene. And
Yeah.
that's a regular report that sexual assault victims give, that
Yes.
it's almost like an outer body experience.
Yes. Yeah.
And the way
Yeah.
she describes
Yeah.
that scene, it's so brief, but I mean, she's in total shock at that stage
Yeah.
as well. Like
Yeah.
her whole, like Sansa's whole narrative has fallen apart. Like knights aren't
Yeah.
knights
Yeah.
and princes aren't princes, and her dad is dead.
And she's given herself to the darkness, so she's in this state of mind where it is going to be like an out of body experience. It doesn't really matter what people are doing to her physically. In a way, she's already mentally in this dark. She's gone to the darkness. She's in this dark place. The fact that the Hound stops her from pushing Joffrey is that's got to be significant. That's got to be significant in some way down the line in terms of their. I do think there is something there. I'm not saying that I'm completely shipping the whole Sansa thing, but I think he's having an impact on her. It might just be that he's this character that is showing us some level of kindness and compassion in this horrific situation that she's in. It could just be that.
I think he could bring her back into the grey.
Yeah. But there is something there, and it seems to be some sort of relationship, whether it's a friendship or just an affinity with each other. I don't know. I mean, we'll see that as it develops. But I thought these 3 chapters together were brilliant for setting out. This finishes now. Your father has died. This is what your life's going to be like from now on. So it gives us the readers that sort of, okay, you know, we can kind of, this isn't going to be a surprise that Arya suddenly disappears and, you know, finds herself on these travels, and that Sansa has this horrible experience, and that Bran goes off to like investigate the Three-Eyed Raven and magic, etc., etc. This kind of sets us up as readers for what's going to be happening next as well.
She still
But
hasn't
yeah,
thought about Arya, right? Again, I don't think she thought about Arya.
No, she hasn't.
But
She thinks about home 3 times in this chapter. She thinks about Winterfell and about being home,
which is going to lead very nicely into the next Dany chapter, where we have a complete transformation for Dany coming, and she thinks about home in the next chapter, and her home was wherever Drogo was.
Yeah.
And she realizes that too late. It seems like Sansa, while she hasn't really said it, that seems to be certainly true for her, that she was so fixated on Joffrey that she lost sight of Ned. And maybe it's too painful to think of Arya. Maybe she feels too guilty about Arya. That's it's I think for me it's the biggest thing is that she's decided that a facade, aesthetics, none of that matters. And I think that's the important thing with the Sandor Clegane relationship, that he's got this burnt face, and she says he can almost hear it when he moves his face, the scars. And I think she's going to learn to see past the visual and into in more depth, and that might mean, it sounds very scary, her going into the darkness, and it could be very scary, but there are things to be seen in the dark as well. Just because it's dark doesn't mean there isn't something to see. So that's certainly, it's certainly where she is now. I think, in fact, I forgot this chapter how important it is, because I felt like Sansa was the Sansa from the beginning of this book till Clash. It didn't click with me that she'd changed so much. And rereading this chapter, I kind of went, wow, this is so much closer to the Sansa even in Winds, that the sample chapter, like that I'd forgotten. It's such a massive thing for her. And the fact that she's getting experience, it's no small thing, the experience she's getting sexually through Pycelle through Littlefinger, through Joffrey, through Sandor, because let's face it, that's her role in this story, is to be some sort of sexual object or some sort of object to be passed around for marriage. It's how she's going to deal with that and how she'll see that and use that. That's the important thing that she had to learn. I still think I'm kind of the reason I don't like to ship her with Sandor, even though it might be good. I still think for Arya or for Sansa in the end, it's going to be more important, I think, her role as a potential virgin queen. And Sansa is definitely on the top of my list for taking the throne at the end. I think I've said that before. I never pick somebody to take the throne because I want them to take the throne. I wouldn't be upset if Sansa took the throne, but I definitely think, just in terms of the model that George R. R. Martin is using for history, I think it would make sense for her to be some sort of virgin queen at the end, and for somebody who doesn't show much compassion for people to be put in a position where she'll have to show compassion but logic as well. I think that's very important in a leader, and I think Sansa has all the makings of that. Whereas Dany, not too logical at the moment. And Jon is nowhere near that yet, so Jon has a long way to go in the story, I think.
Definitely,
But that's I think the other thing through this chapter is just how undignified Ned's ending is, and she cannot handle that. That's the problem, I think, for her. It's just the lack of dignity in it. I think if Sansa was to have her own house colours, it'd be like something, dignity would be in there in some way. Her own house.
I forgot as well that Septa Mordain was there, and again she kind of reflects on, why did you need to do that? She was a woman, she was a religious woman. Why on earth did you need to do that? And then of course we get the measure of what's going to be happening with Joffrey, and that he is an absolute little turd, and that the way that he's dispensing his own version of justice, and just he's a horror.
And the of course the other thing in this chapter is the punishments he's handing out in court. This is the kind of king that people are getting. Like, a woman comes to plead mercy for the man she loves. She wants to bury him, and he throws her in the dungeons because she's clearly a traitor as well. It's really, really
which
dark.
Is exactly what is happening with Sansa. She's came to plead for a traitor, and she loves him, and it's like, well, basically she has effectively been thrown in the dungeon, but just a different type of dungeon. She's still a prisoner effectively,
and I don't think she realizes how rebellious she's actually being. I think she does it almost on impulse. She doesn't even realize, like, she keeps calling him your lord, or my lord.
My lord.
And he says, no, it's your grace, and he has to correct her 2 or 3 times. And she doesn't consciously do it, but Sansa is so much, even she ends this chapter saying she remembers her courtesies. She's so much about that she wouldn't make that mistake.
No.
So there's definitely there's a rebel in there, but she has to use her charm, I guess, whereas Arya has to use her arm.
So next week we've got 5 final chapters.
Dany 9 to Dany 10.
And
it's definitely a Dany story from here on in.
Yes.
Bit of Jon, but there's not much. It's all about Dany, I feel, for the rest of the book. I could be wrong. I could surprise myself, but.
So we will be back next Sunday.
Thank you to Simon and Sonny and Barbara for joining us, and to everybody else who will join us later. And I forgot to say one more time, thanks to John for joining us last week. It was great to see you, John. And thank you, Claire, for joining us.
You're welcome. No problem.
So we will see you all next week, same channel, last installment. And talk to you then, guys. Bye.
Bye.